Okay, welcome back. It is July 12 of 2015. We get a chance to look at Brentano's Foundation of Ethics again, and we had that opportunity to look at that conceptual analysis which presented the true, the good, the better, and the motivational base. And now he's kind of breaking down the components, beginning with epistemology, but then looking for the intrinsic good that is present at every level of epistemology. And so we just finished looking at the acquisition of the lexical ideas in that very first moment of presentation in existential judgment. And if you remember from the conceptual analysis, the very first moment in analytical judgment is first to pass through axiomatic-expansion, where you've kind of formed some axioms of the true. And you use those as a preparatory work before you get into sign model construction. And this lecture is actually addressing that topic in its entirety, just simply axiomatic expansion, the very first moment, the preparatory moment before you get into sign model construction and actually engaging in the relational aspect of linking those ideas and the lexical content together. So it's an important stage, and he's kind of breaking down these individual moments for us now, so we get to look at them in a little bit better detail. And he begins with the objective good, and that's a topic he's never taken up before. And it's interesting because a lot of phenomenologists are always interpreted as being very much centered in the subjective and have no interest in the objective except in a very relational way. And they're always anti-metaphysics, anti-ontology. Brentano certainly fits that category. He's psychognostic analysis, not metaphysics. He's very much into psyche and psychognostic analysis. So he fits that genre. But the interesting thing is that he does address objective reality and that realm that does speak to metaphysics and objective teleology. How does teleology become reflected in the objective reality? Is there an intrinsic good that is objective, that exists objectively? And so it's a legitimate question, especially when you're working out a foundation of ethics. It's very much a legitimate question, so he needs to address that. So he's going to take just 15 pages here. It's it's a very small essay, not a lot of pages, but it has some pretty good content. He begins with the objective good, and he begins with the axiomatic expansion that our present welfare and our future welfare are both worthy of love and both worthy of being addressed. We're not just concerned with the present existential moment. We are properly and authentically concerned with a teleology. We are properly and authentically to be concerned with a psychognostic analysis that also looks at the teleology. And if we look at teleology, we have to address the objective good. We can't ignore the objectivity. If we're going to address a teleology, of course we form that imprinting of the lexical content as our teleosis. We already discussed that, but we cannot ignore the objective reality and the objective good. So future welfare is an authentic aspect of our investigation. And he says the objective good equals any object of justified interest, which is bound up with selves capable of interest within that same objectivity. We are, of course, existentially implicated in our own sign models that we construct. I mean, that's very obvious. We are existentially bound up with the objectivity we're trying to imprint. That's a very obvious statement. So this objective good equals any object of justified interest, which we are interested in forming our sign model, which includes ourself along with other selves taken up within that interest. But he does emphasize, after all, he is a psychognostic philosopher. The psychical good does hold priority over the physical good. The imprinting is still the most important aspect for Brentano. Psychognostic model building, psychognostic imprinting of the lexical content, and then positing that as an eschatological teleology for objective reality is the prioritized good over the physical good. But he gives us, in the first moment, a triad of what the objective good represents within his system. I think it's good to actually put himself on a line like this, because he does obviously say that he's not positing a metaphysic, he's not positing an ontology, but he must answer that question, so he makes himself vulnerable here and says, well, here's my triad of what the objective good represents for my system. That's an important step to take. He says it is the instance of presenting, which contains the good in itself. That is an objectivity, the instance of presenting. And then the modality of secondary presentation, the for itself, in other words, the going out of the self, of the in itself of presenting, which becomes secondary object, confronting the individual with the individual's experience. There becomes that analytic acquisition of knowledge from analytical judgment. He says that knowledge becomes an objectivity. And we know that it is looked at that way. Remember in our lesson on the conceptual analysis, he always interpreted knowledge as an aspect of positing, as an internal externality. That's not subjectivity. That's very distinct. That's very Hegelian. That's objectivity. It's an imprinting of objectivity, but it exists as an internal objectivity. So you've got to really remember that knowledge in the second moment of the triad is objective for Brentano. It constitutes objective good. And third, the modality of motivational positing. Well, here you have it. This is the realm of positing itself. The in and for itself, where we actually posit our motivationally loved sign model, and also reflexively anticipate a return of knowing, a return of the expansion of cyclical knowing. So this first moment is very important for giving us the details of his version of the objective. In the second moment, he wants to take up the idea of preference, or the better. He says there are two cases for preference for the better. We prefer the pure idea out of our realm of ideas. We talked about that in the last lesson, of trying to ascertain the pure beautiful, the noble, the ethically noble within the Greek, if you want to take the Greek interpretation or the Aristotle's interpretation, the beautiful as ethical nobility. We want to attain ideas that represent ethical nobility, the pure idea, which in Hegel's system, that's called category rather than concept. Categories abbreviate sub-concepts, but the category is always the pure idea. We also prefer the whole group, in other words, a model rather than a part. We prefer the relational enclosure of all the lexical ideas in a holistic presentation. So we prefer a pure idea, we prefer a holistic model. So we do have a preference for a categorical model that encloses all of the sub-concepts or ideas. So a very important second moment on preference. So finally we can look at his third moment in axiomatic-expansion as that preparatory work for getting ready for sign model construction and analytical work. He says that an idea or a model of ideas becomes the better if it is emotively loved in a motivational way. 2. The concept of correct model equals that which is given preference as more probable. Certainty is never part of Brentano's system. Certainty is something that we strive for as a teleosis. It's part of a teleology that's trying to attain toward certainty, but we posit a probability of the true, a probability of the true. 3. Qualitative differences fall within two classes, cognition and emotion, but cognition is going to win out for Brentano. Remember, he says we posit a knowledge model. So the insight of knowledge is that which transcends the finite, but noble love is a finite good, a finite percept. So for him, the insight of knowledge is what we posit as a model of insight, and that transcends finitude. It provides transcendence for shaping our finite historical reality. And then a note to axiom 4, he says, therefore we posit a model of psychognostic insight. And then 5, richer and more fertile ideas are more valuable than meager ones. And we enrich those ideas through relation, by relating ideas to each other, and by also relating subconcepts to the pure idea or the categorical idea. Now, 6, very important, to return to the first moment. Enriched psychical ideas are more valuable than affirmed generalizations. Therefore, every return where we gain psychical insight helps to enrich the entire psychognostic process. After these 6 axioms, we're ready to transition to analytical judgment, and the construction of our sign model and attaining to the relation between ideas and the relation of subconcepts to categories or